Hello, welcome to the 8th video of this course. Today we are going to show how to add user code in objects created by WorkWithPlus for web. Also how to create user controls for the screens created by WorkWithPlus. As we have seen in previous videos, WorkWithPlus in each transaction generates a series of objects for each different feature. For example, when we go to the person transaction and click on WorkWithPlus person, here we can see the offspring of the transaction. For example, the person WW web panel has been created for the selection object. For the view, the person view web panel has been created. Several more objects for various functionalities, such as export PDF and Excel, and also to make the filters work. WorkWithPlus allows us to add all the code that is necessary for these objects. For example, if we need to add a message when the person selection panel opens, for example, we can add the following code. As I am demonstrating here, we have to open the person WW web panel and go to the events part. We must go to the events section, where we will find all the events that we have created and their respective code. Here we can see the start event. And it is important to note that any code that we need to add must be outside of this section. The next step after this would be to add the event we want. In this case, we will create a code to run when the screen is entered. Also, in this case, the message will say, "You have entered the screen, person." It is important to remember, as I have mentioned before, that all code added by us must be after these comments. That is, we can place the code here, which is the start of the start event, or also right here, which is the end of the start event, never here in the middle. Here we can notice that it says end, which is the end of the start event, and here it says start, which indicates the beginning of the event. It is possible to do this in any of the events, or also create new events or subroutines that are necessary. Now let's see how to include controls within WorkWithPlus. For that, we are going to go to the person transaction. Let's now see how to include user controls within WorkWithPlus. As we saw, WorkWithPlus allows us to add various controls from its hierarchical editor, such as, for example, creating tables, attributes, and actions. But what about other user-specific controls? Like, for example, if we want to include a Google Charts graph. In this case, Genexus will make the Google Charts user control available to us. To create our user control, we must right-click on the section of the screen that we want it to be in and select Add. Then user control and our user control would be created. Then you need to give it a name and customize its respective properties. In our case, we will place the graphic type with Charts footer. In addition, in this scenario, we will place it next to the grid, and we will create a responsive table with 2 columns. Once we are here, we will place the grid and the user control. To create our responsive table, we must click here, right-click, Add Responsive tab, and place our grid in it simply by pressing Control, the name, and the custom properties we want. Now, we will enter the name of our user control, which in our case will be called Use Charts. We must place the name where it says Control Name, which is where we are going to put Use Charts. And, for user control, we are going to put the one that says Cool Charts. And when we place it, we will see it here. To place our table in 2 columns, we must go to the properties where it says Number of Columns and set it to 2. Automatically, the grid and our user control will be seen next to it. After we add the control, we can modify its location from the hierarchical declaration without problem. We just have to select it and move it. For example, like this, here, and it would stay here in first position. We can also do Control X and move it to another section, or else dragging it with the mouse. In our case, we are going to use it so that it is on the other side of the grid. Then, we will move it down, and it would remain as it was previously. We want it to stay on this side. This is how you would see it. The last thing we need to make this control to work is to add code in the web panel event. To do this, we double-click here on Default List, and it takes us to the Person WW web panel. We then go to the events, and we have to add the following code at the end of the start event, after the message we created earlier. Always remember to add your own code at the end or at the beginning of each event. What I mean is that this code does not remain within the code created by WorkWithPlus. For the correct functioning of the code, and to be able to save it without any issues or problems, you must remember that each variable that we have created must be assigned to the Variables section. To do this correctly, we must right-click on said variable and click on Add Variable. Do so with each of our variables. To be sure that this variable has been created correctly, we must go to the Variables section and check that ours were created here. I think it is also important to mention that if you have to create the variables manually, as explained beforehand, you must ensure that the data types are correct. Otherwise, you must select them. Click here and see the properties, and you must check that they say, for instance, Google Charts.series, and in the other one, .data. We can use any user control that we have installed, or one that we have created using user control objects. In this way, we have 100% flexibility to add any control and customize our screens to the maximum. We invite you to subscribe to our channel so that you are always up to date of our upcoming videos. See you there!